again, everyone. In this video I wanted to go over another topic that I find very interesting. It's probably my favorite topic next to Book of Shadows, flip-throughs, and creation. And that is the concept of magical alphabets. Now, I know that at some point or other, pretty much all of us have considered the idea of writing out our Book of Shadows completely in some foreign alphabet. Usually we think of, I had it here the other day here, the witch's alphabet, and that looks like this. This is very often and very typically used. And I have attempted to use this myself in the past for writing certain things, but I found that it was not useful for me. And here's the reason why. And this is why I want to touch on this topic. I read a quote somewhere about someone talking about the same thing, that you can write your Book of Shadows in any script you want. Whatever feels good to you, you can do it. Write the whole thing. You can do it all up entirely in ancient Klingon if you want to. But the problem is, unless the alphabet or the language you're using is something that you are fluent in, something that you use on a regular basis, doing that has the potential of creating a Book of Shadows that you will never use because you have to spend too much time deciphering it in order to use the material that you've spent so many loving hours putting into it. So that is something that I agree with. I attempted at one point to use the witch's alphabet, and because it's not something I use on the regular, it's not something that stuck. Now granted, if I wanted to, I could create a habit out of that and I could become fluent in using this alphabet. But I did not find it useful because these letters are actually very involved. There's a lot of movement and different symbols and everything involved in each letter, and to me, it created a much slower process. One of the reasons that I really enjoy handwriting and penmanship is not just for the aesthetic purposes. It's not just to make something that looks nice, but it's also for the efficiency of it. Each evolution in handwriting tried to come up with a better way to use it to make it more efficient, especially for business. Because in business you had to do a lot of record keeping, you had to take down a lot of information, and doing that with a bunch of flourishes and complicated letters was not effective. So I am going to offer up a couple of alternatives in this video for doing the Book of Shadows in the witch's script as the traditional thing that we think of. I just had an idea come to my head and I've lost it. But I've remembered now. My alternates are, first, and probably easiest, if you are multilingual, bilingual, trilingual, what have you, you can certainly write a Book of Shadows, write everything in your Book of Shadows in whatever language or languages you speak. I have a cookbook like that. I have a cookbook that I have handwritten out recipes that I've gotten through my travels. I have recipes in English, German, and Spanish. So, and hopefully at some point in time I will be able to add French to that list, because I would really love to start learning and being able to effectively use French. But I've written them down in the language that they came to me in, because I didn't want to lose anything from it. And that works for me because I can easily, at this point, easily read and comprehend the information in that book. So that's one option. And also, by the way, I know many people want to use a magical alphabet not just for the aesthetics of it, but also because you want to encrypt or otherwise protect the information that you are putting down. So writing in multiple languages is not necessarily the most secure way to do that, but it is very likely that you can protect some of the information in there just by doing that, because not very many of the people that you know will probably speak all of the same languages that you do. So that's one thing. Another option that I have, before I get into that, I want to bring up a book. I really should write out notes probably for these videos, but I love this book. I bought it years ago. I think I got rid of it and then had to find it again, and it was harder to find. But it is Magickal Alphabets by Nigel Pennick. Anyone who studies the northern tradition, Asatru, Germanic, has probably heard this name. And Nigel Pennick is an authority on ancient and modern mysteries, an expert on Northern European geomancy, a rune master, and a practicing geomant. So, he's been around a while. He knows his stuff. I like the detail and academic research put into his books. And this one specifically talks about alphabets. He goes over the runes, Greek, and Hebrew alphabets. I believe those three at least I know are in here. He may go over a couple of additional alphabets. But the idea of this book is letters contain kind of the idea of how we experience life. So they wrote it out better, and I'll just read it here. Using the premise that languages and the alphabets that comprise them are metaphorical microcosms of our world. Metaphorical microcosms. So basically, we have taken what we experience around us in the world, and we've tried over time, over generations since time began, we've tried to condense that down into a visual representation. And that representation, those symbols, became our alphabets that we use, that any culture with a written alphabet, a written history has. So this does not include, obviously, oral traditions. But the source, according to Pennick, the source of our alphabets is this idea of trying to conceptualize the mystery of the world around us. And that is the most important part, I believe, of writing things down on paper. Writing has always been the thing I've been drawn to as an artistic medium, and also because letters and words are mystery encapsulated to me. Since I was a child, I remember thinking, I looked at sentences and rhyme schemes and structures. I looked at it all like a non-pictorial puzzle. A puzzle that you have to put everything in the right spot and have it sound just so, in order for the meaning and the beauty and the picture, the mental picture, in order for that to come out of those words, you need to arrange everything in the correct spot. So that is where the connection comes in between alphabet, between writing these simple symbols, and magic. This is why writing down spells, writing down rituals is considered so powerful. And in some cases, for example with the runes, it was a very bad thing if you wrote something down incorrectly. You could cause damage by doing that. So this is the power of the alphabet, and this is why I have nothing at all against writing your Book of Shadows in a magical alphabet of some sort. With that in mind though, that magical alphabet does not need to be something foreign to you. If you grew up working with a language that uses Roman letters, the Roman alphabet, Those are letters. They have meaning that came from the same initial primordial ideas that created the runes, Hebrew, Greek, any other, the Sanskrit, Aramaic, whatever have you. It all comes from the same root of people trying to understand and communicate what they're experiencing. So don't necessarily view your own alphabet as being non-magical, because it certainly is in that minute sense. Okay, so from there, so wonderful book, Magickal Alphabets, Nigel Pennick, highly recommend it if you can find it. Take a look, and it's great. Now, back to my alternates. I already mentioned using different languages that you may speak. The other thing is, I have another book here, shorthand. This is the Greg Shorthand Manual Simplified, very tiny. It has something like 72 lessons. But by the end of the first lesson, you're already starting to read shorthand. And I love that. This is amazingly quick to digest, quick to use. And now you could say, well, shorthand, but people can read shorthand, etc. I would argue not really anymore. Shorthand, again, was developed by the business world to create a more efficient way of transcribing information. Secretaries. If you wanted to be a secretary back in the 50s and earlier, probably even up to the 60s, definitely, and earlier, you had to know shorthand. There was no getting around it. You could not be an effective stenographer without it. However, since the advent of word processors, computers, better recording equipment, it's gone out the window. It's not taught regularly anymore. People don't learn it. Anything to do with physically writing, people are not learning anymore these days. Children are not being taught handwriting. And I find that a huge, huge shame, because we are losing a very magical element of our daily lives. So, if you have something like shorthand, which I have been trying off and on for probably the last 2 years to teach myself, and it just has not clicked with me yet, because I get to a point and then I put it on the back burner and then I have to start over again. But if you are interested in doing something like this, shorthand, and there are different variations, this would be a great way to try and write out your Book of Shadows. Many famous people, I'm pretty sure Theodore Roosevelt, various journalists, many people known for their writing were also known for keeping personal journals in shorthand, written in shorthand, so that you're constantly using it and it's always right there for you. And again, hopefully this will show up, but if you take a look, it just looks like a bunch of squiggles. Wiggles and squiggles, and the average person today cannot read this. So this, again, it's not a totally different alphabet. It is rooted in something that was used as a commonplace writing system, but in modern times, this would be a very good way to encrypt anything you don't want people to read. And lastly, I do not have something to show you with this. I'll see if I can maybe find a picture online that I can insert. But if you have another type of writing, another type of script that you enjoy for whatever reason, or that has meaning to you, that's difficult for other people to read, use it. So, for example, aside from using a different alphabet such as I think it's called Coptic alphabet, what's used in Eastern Europe, we know it mainly from Russian, or something like Arabic, those type of symbols. Aside from using that, my example is Sutherland. And I can't remember now. I know it began in 1914 or 1915, ran through maybe either 41 or 51. I get kind of confused on that. But Sütterlein was a type of handwriting script developed in Germany and taught to school children as standard handwriting. They were developing a standard handwriting. So it was developed and taught during that time frame, and that was what was used. It's very harsh, up and down. It's just up and down strokes. Some of the letters look very odd. And I know this script. I have seen this script throughout my lifetime because I've had relatives who, as children, learned it. My grandparents would have learned this script. And not my dad or my aunts and uncles, but my grandparents, my great-grandfather, when he was alive now, he would have learned a different type of script beforehand, but it's very possible that he used this script as well. But no matter what the source, I know that I have seen this script very often in my lifetime from my German and Austrian family, because it was standard. I can't read it. Many people today, Germans today, the grandchildren of the people who learned this script have trouble reading it. They can't read it because it is no longer standard. It has not been since at least the 1950s. But it is still a very usable, fairly easy to learn script based on the Roman alphabet, and again, very what do you call that? It's different enough that someone just randomly picking up your Book of Shadows or whatever you're using it for is not going to be able to read it. And for me, this has meaning to me because of the importance of my family and my cultural heritage, etc., etc. I would enjoy taking up this script and using it in my Book of Shadows. And that is probably the most important point. Whatever system of alphabet and writing that you want to use in your Book of Shadows, I keep saying that because that's what we usually want to use it for, but this can be in any part of life. Whatever you take up, it has to have meaning and value for you. This alphabet did not for me, and therefore I had no interest or inclination in working at trying to become fluent in this. So even though I think it's lovely, I do enjoy the history of it, it's not for me. I would have a much better time and would be much more interested in taking up any of those alternates that I mentioned, using the other languages I speak, using the older script of my grandparents, or using shorthand. So whatever you choose to use, make sure that it makes sense for you. Not just that you're using it because, oh, it's the witch's script or it's the angelic script or whatever, and oh, I need to know it because I'm a witch. Not necessarily. It has to have meaning for you because these letters hold meaning. Letters and words encapsulate our understanding of the world around us, of our spirituality, of ourselves. So you're creating a little treasure with each word that you write. And something with that much meaning should have meaning to you. The vessel, in this case, is just as important as the actual literal meaning of the words that you're putting down. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hope it wasn't too long for you. And let me know your thoughts and any creative ways you have found of writing down your information that you want to keep in your Book of Shadows or elsewhere. I would love to hear it. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.